Welcome everybody to our third podcast. My name's Tim Olson, and with me is my son Derek. And we're going to talk today about how to work wholesale the right way. And so we thank you for being with us. We actually hope that you will subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, and we're glad to have you with us, Derek, today. And I was going to ask you, I'm out of town. You're not. So have you been working on any cool jobs lately?
Yeah, I've got a couple I could. Oh, are you still there?
Yeah, still here.
I've got a couple I could report on. There was a big lifted F-150 today that I was working on this afternoon, and it had a 12-inch lift and 40-inch tires. So I had to carry around a ladder just to reach the door dings. So I had to laugh at myself for that. Just trying to, get a couple feet off the ground. And then I also got to work on a Cadillac ELR, and that's the first time I've ever got to work on one of those. That's their kind of hybrid model. It's a little two-door, but it uses an electric motor, and it's really a kind of a cool little car. So I was excited to get to try that out.
Nice. Well, that's really cool. I'm glad that things are going well for you back there. One of the things we are going to talk about working wholesale, but we're also going to talk about randomness, because I had a random thought for you. Basically, the thought is that people are not as random as we think we are. And if you'll stick with us, you'll see how this applies to our discussion for today. But it was a few months ago, I heard another podcast actually talking about this researcher named Deborah Nolan at UC Berkeley. And she has a way of proving that people are not as random as we think. So if I say, well, think of a random number, that's one thing. But what if I asked you to think of how many times you could flip a coin? What would it be, heads or tails? Well, most people have this kind of thing. So like if you look at a coin flip, and that coin flip comes up 7, maybe even 10 times, if it comes up heads, people say, well, I really think it should hit on tails. I think it's going to hit on tails the next time. You ever heard of that, Derek?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. So people will be like, oh, yeah, that's 7 times in a row. It's got to be tails next time, right? But the odds are always what? They're always going to be 50-50, aren't they? But people think that the odds change because there's a lot of those coin flips that happen. And it kind of makes me think of my aunt a few years ago. She was following us actually to my brother's wedding. And when we arrived, I set the cruise on 65. I figured she could follow me, no problem. I do the speed limit, whatever. But when we arrived, she says, you were speeding the whole time. And I said, really? I set my cruise on 65. She said, well, your speedometer was wrong, because I was doing 65 and you're in front of me. So you had to be going 5 miles an hour faster. Now that kind of blew my mind a little bit, but it kind of relates back to what we thought about. You're thinking about this with, the coin flip's got to be tails this next time. The odds are way better that it's actually going to be tails because it's been heads so many times. But that's not the way it works. And the way Deborah Nolan illustrates that is she has 2 groups of people. So there's 2 people sitting at one table, 2 groups of people sitting at another table. And she says, at this table, I want you to actually literally flip the coin 100 times and write it down. And the other group, she says, I want you to just imagine that you're flipping a coin and write that down. So you're going to imagine that you're flipping the coin 100 times and record your results. She walks out, comes back in when they're done, and she looks at their little chart that they recorded their coin flips on, and she says, this is the real coin flip. This is the real record of the coin flips. And the reason why she could do that is because she could tell in a real coin flip situation, you're going to have long runs. You're going to have 7, 8, 10 flips in a row that come up one way. But when the person is imagining that randomness, he's like, no way, that can't happen. So he just won't record 10 in a row or 7 in a row even. So no, we need to make this one tails because so many have been heads. So people just aren't as random as we think they are. And at the website where this, at our blog where we post this, I'll stick a link up there so you can do more research on that if you want to. But randomness happens, it's going to come around to what we're talking about today, which is wholesale. And working wholesale in paintless and repair, really even any kind of mobile business that you're in, Um, so when we talk about what wholesale, what are we really talking about? Are we talking about just dealer work? Actually, no, it's any time you're not getting all the money. So can you think of some examples, Derek?
Yeah, so dealer is the obvious one, but there's also when you're working for a body shop, when you're working under a broker, or when you're even splitting with another technician, that would all fit the definition of wholesale work.
Now, hold on a second. You're telling me that when you split with another tech, that's wholesale.
Yes, because you are not getting all the money.
Okay. Well, all right. All right. That makes sense to me. But the main one that we want to talk about that's wholesale is dealers. Now, is that what Derek just said? Is that true? Because you're not keeping all the money. What's happened to the rest of the money? Is it just out there in the ether? And so the difference that we're talking about today is retail price versus a wholesale price, right? So, I mean, why would I give somebody a wholesale price, Derek?
Sorry,
Oh,
it's really cutting out.
oh,
I
is it
could
cutting
hear
out?
you that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Uh, so the question was, why would I give somebody a wholesale price? And really, you would do that in exchange for volume. And that's where most guys go wrong here. And we'll talk about that for a minute. But really, it loops back to our intro. It should never be random. And, just thinking about that example that we gave above there. But the random part of it kind of goes where most guys go and they get a dealer account and the guy says, "Oh, I'll give you all my business." And, he brings you one job and he's like, "I'll give you all my business." Well, he actually doesn't really qualify to get a wholesale price, does he? So if we stick to our guns right, we're going to do it right. So I want to talk to the way it used to be. And this is the way I did it. And this is why it was kind of random, I thought, whether or not you got the guy's business. So what we would do is we'd go walk a lot and then we'd make this list of cars that needed to be done and we'd give it to the used car manager. And basically when we did that, what we were saying was, can I have some of your business? You got these cars with dings, they need to be fixed. Can we do it? Well, I mean, it kind of puts you in a beggar's position in a way, and you're hoping that eventually that you will get into a trust position. And we did that where we had some accounts where it was like we didn't have to walk the lot anymore. We'd go pick up a car, say, "Hey, this needs to be done. We're going to take it and do it, take care of it." But this dealer one time, he said, "Listen, I'd like to not be surprised when you guys do a car. Could we set the price at $100 a car max?" I was like, "Whoa, okay. I guess we could do that. I have to think about it." And we did it with him for quite a while and it worked out okay. But, there's a reason why he wanted a fixed price, which we're going to come to. Um, but it turned out to be kind of not so great because once he had a fixed price, when he went to the auction, it was kind of bad for us because he'd buy all the banged up ones. He's like, okay, he would look at the cars the other guys wouldn't look at because they're thinking $200 a car, maybe. That's a lot of dents. My dent guy's going to rake me over the coals on that one. Whereas we're at $100, we've just promised to do it. So he's kind of looking at the worst ones. But I think the setup should be today. What do you think it should be, Derek?
Well, yeah, you could walk up and talk to the dealer about it. Say, I'm offering volume pricing. Their ears will perk up when you say that. And you say, I'll do your cars for X price. And, of course, have that price in mind, whatever you think would be reasonable. And say, but I get to inspect them all. So you get to, have that little caveat there. So an example of that would be like, I'll do your cars for $80 per car. But again, I get to inspect every car. And so by doing that, you're taking kind of the good with the bad. You're understanding, yeah, some of them are going to be a little worse, but some of them might only have one ding or whatever. And so you just kind of make it up on the volume.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly true. And the reason why I think this is the only way that you should do it is because now you guys are sort of in a partnership with the dealer. And when I first heard about this, I was like, what, $180 a car? Because I hated the $100 a car, to be frank with you. But when somebody said, look, they're going to buy a certain number of cars every month. And as long as you get to look at the cars and you get a list of the new cars, or you just pay attention, actually, if that car runs through that dealership and it's got a dent in it, then you're getting X amount of dollars per car. And that's really the only way I would do it. If we don't do dealers work today, but if I was going to do dealer work, that would be the only way I would do it, because uh, it's really it's the best for all. And the reason why it is a quote that I think is appropriate here. Zig Ziglar said, "You can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want." Now, that is a Zig Ziglar quote. What you may not know is that he's not the first guy to say that. Um, that when you think about Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, something very similar was said in that, recorded many years prior to that. But it's even kind of in the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do to you. And that's really what you're doing. You're sort of putting the dealer's wants ahead of your own for a moment, only in the sense that you're going to think like that dealer. What does he really want? And we found out earlier when our dealer said, "Hey, can you guys max out at $100 a car? Because I really got to know at the auction, what am I going to spend?" What was he talking about? Well, he talked about the math, auction math, he called it. And he said, I know this car's got dents. It's going to have the interior fixed. Does it need tires? I mean, there's several things that it might need. And one time he said to me something kind of interesting. He goes, these cars will $100 to death. That's a bit of a tongue twister, or my tongue is just twisted. But so that's what he, when he said that, it's like, okay, I get it. So, what really does the dealer want, Derek? I mean, what does he really, really want?
Yeah, at the end of the day, he wants to have no heartburn. So that means no time wasted on haggling with vendors like us, the dent people. No surprises on repairs and how much they cost, because he's always thinking about his margin, right? What's he going to make on it? And he probably has that number in the back of his mind, and doesn't doesn't want to have to fool with that money. And he wants his cars fixed without asking too, and that just makes it a pain-free process for the dealer.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I always thought, I never thought of it, but there were times when we wouldn't pay attention to the lot because it's like, well, I don't want to go. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not there. You get tired of the asking for permission. And he would call us. He'd say, "Hey man, I got some cars over here to fix. You're going to come fix them?" And I never thought really that as a failure on my part, but it really was. It was, I just really gave him heartburn that he didn't need. Should be a simple process, like Derek said, pain free for him. It should be easy for him to deal with that. And he's got plenty of things to think about. He's trying to make deals with people walking in the lot, and as well, he's trying to buy cars. So now there's one other thing that I want to mention when like Derek said, don't give heartburn. And I think this is kind of an interesting thing to me. And it's don't ask for a check every time you fix a car or every day that you go fix a car. Some of you guys out there, I think most of you probably get a PO, but there's some guys that I've seen that they won't leave until they get a check for that day. Now, this is a little bit, some of you may find this uncomfortable if you're doing it. If you're not, you probably feel better. But most people that are broke, don't have money, you'll find if you watch their behaviors, one of the things that they do is they go and pay their bills in person. And it could have started at some point where, maybe a bill got lost in the mail. That's happened to me. What in the world? My check got lost in the mail? Really? Okay. Well, but do you still stop trusting the mail service? Or, nowadays it's all, you could do it over the internet banking. Well, I don't trust that either. Okay. But really, whatever started it, it's a behavior that is not really worthy of your time. I mean, if you think about it, you're spending time going to pay a bill, and it just puts you really in a minimum wage kind of situation. So think about that for a minute. I mean, you guys should be making X amount of dollars per hour, and your time spent doing that is not worth it. So now think about you at the dealership. And I knew a vendor that did this. He was a touch-up guy. And he's like, "I don't have POs. I don't do it. They know when I come there, I get a check." Well, I mean, you've got a lady that's the accounts payable clerk. You're definitely giving her heartburn, because how many times are you going? Once a week? You going twice a week? What if you get another car? Is she going to write you 3 checks in a week? What a hassle. Now the accounting department, they've got to make that entry. That's a heartburn for them. And if you think that doesn't roll uphill to the sales manager, believe me, it does. So, don't worry about getting a PO. don't worry about being paid monthly, and think about that. What you do on your wholesale accounts. We went to a seminar years ago, and there was a guy there from Flying Colors, I think it was. I'm not sure if they're even in business anymore, but it was one of those big paint companies and this was back in the 90s. So if they're gone, but what he said was actually kind of appropriate. He said, think about wholesale. If you think about a bullseye or a target on a dartboard, he said, the bullseye you got to hit every month is right there in the center. That you got to hit that, because that's what your bills are. You got to pay your bills. So that's what you're aiming for every month. And that's the middle. But he said on the outside of that is kind of the easy stuff that, it's kind of easy to hit. And that's the retail. And so retail comes in, but your bills are paid because wholesale has already taken care of them. So, that should be the way it is for you guys. If you let POs build up, now it might be uncomfortable for a month or two as you let those, accounts build up, but those guys are going to pay. Hopefully they'll pay on time, but usually, if you send them a statement, they'll pay. So in exchange for all this, like Derek said, not giving heartburn, what do you get from the dealer? You get his trust. And like I said, you get a predictable income. Hopefully you might get loyalty from the dealer on a certain level. I do think that happens. But that's really the only way that I would work wholesale. So if you guys are doing it, if you actually are doing any kind of volume, even if you're not doing volume, you hope to get volume. I mean, why would you go on the dealership lot if you didn't hope to get every car that they got, or at least most of their cars? And think about it too, as a way to kind of lock out your competition. Well, I already give so-and-so all my cars, and you could make that part of the agreement. Hey, look, if I do it for X amount of dollars a car, I want to be the only guy. I will take care of you. But if anybody else does the lot, that breaks up the whole deal, because he'll take the easy stuff. We can't have that. You can understand that, can't you? So that's really the only way that I would do it. Do you have anything else to add about working wholesale accounts, Derek?
Yeah, I have one thing, is to don't assume that the dealer will say no, and just always ask, let them be the one to say no. Because sometimes, we can get into a headspace where like, that person already uses somebody, or, they probably don't want that fixed. Well, that may be the case, but if you ask, let them be the ones to say no to you. And then too, just to kind of sum up, this one question keeps coming into my mind is always ask, how can I help the customer? And that's really what we've talked about today, is for the dealer, since that's, in this case, is the customer, it's wholesale, the dealer, or, how can I help them? Because, what you want is their money. So it's obvious what you want, but how can you help them get what they want? Just keep asking that question.
Yeah. Ask yourself that all the time, huh? That's cool. I really like that. Now, have you been reading anything or that's cool lately that you'd like to share with?
No, I haven't had a chance to. I got to get back to my reading schedule.
Well, cool. All right. Well, that's great. Now, do you have anything else you want to add, or just about wholesale, or anything about what we talked about today?
No, I actually do want to highlight that point that we just mentioned about not being afraid to get a PO. That we applied that mostly to dealers, but that applies to the other wholesale things we talked about too, as far as body shops and just, again, because it makes it easier for them. Anything you can do to make it easy, they're just going to love it. It's really going to make you stand out too.
Yeah. And it does go back to what we talked about actually in the last podcast about how not to get ripped off, because we did cover that, working for local businesses, and, it's a concern. You are putting yourself at risk if you build yourself, if it's $3,000 to $10,000 a month, that you are at risk. But, go back and listen to that podcast. We talk about ways to handle that, but I think it's good to think about it this way, and I hope you guys can build your business based on what we talked about today, and why we think it's the best model to follow. We do hope you will subscribe to our podcast, as mentioned, and we're going to be talking about something pretty cool next week. I think you'll like it. PDR lights, which one is the right one? I've never taken a stand on this, and Derek and I, we try not to use offensive language, but I think some of you listening probably will be offended. But that's okay because I know that I'm right, and you'll see why. No, that's not true, but I think you'll see our reason why we say that, what we say next week, and I think you'll enjoy it because I've done some research on lights, and I think when you hear what we have to say, I think you'll like it. So, Derek, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, we'll see you guys on the next podcast. Thanks so much.